There's a new tell-all documentary about Benjamin Netanyahu and the corruption in the Israeli government that you need to watch. But you probably haven't seen it because it was mysteriously pulled from all the major streaming platforms for reasons. They have some serious bombshells in there, like leaked police depositions from the Adelsons, testimony from Bibi's lifelong best friend, his campaign manager, and co-conspirators in a long list of alleged crimes. But most importantly, the documentary sheds light on how the Middle East got so messed up, how and why Bibi took Israel to war with Hamas, and why he has no intention of ending that conflict. This documentary changes everything. And today, we're going to break it all wide open and show you where you can still find it and watch it for yourself. Welcome back to Candace. A lot of Americans and people around the world don't know enough about Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial. I mean, I didn't know enough about his corruption trial. And I didn't know, before I started learning more, that through understanding his corruption trial, you come to understand the current state of the Israeli government and the ultra-right-wing party in power. And tragically, you gain a whole new perspective, a critical perspective on what's happening in Gaza and all the rest of Israel's military actions around its borders right now. And the best place for you to start, after you finish watching this video, of course, is with the documentary that was shortlisted for an Oscar nomination released last year, named The Bibi Files. It's one of the best documentaries you'll ever watch, and it includes leaked police interrogation footage, not only of Bibi and his wife, but also of Miriam and Sheldon Adelson, two of the most powerful Jewish political donors in the world. It has footage of the interrogation of Arnon Milchan, ex-Israeli spy and now Hollywood mogul, who stands at the center of the trial. And it has footage of Bibi's lifelong best friend, his former associates, his former personal assistant, his campaign manager, and a wide cast of Israeli sources. Miriam Adelson specifically says in one of the police interrogations, quote, "What can I say? If this comes out, I'm dead." Well, it got out. And then, mysteriously, it was pulled from all streaming platforms, basically wiped from the internet. Amazon Prime, where it had been available, simply showed this video is currently unavailable to watch in your location. But try using a VPN, and you will discover that it is unavailable to watch in any location. It's gone. Or at least, that is apparently what Bibi would like to happen. Except that, unfortunately for our boy Benjamin, the internet has a way of holding on to things, especially things that you try to bury. And we dug it up. And at the end of this segment, I'll show you where you can go to watch it today. Let's start, though, with just a brief intro from the documentary to get you feeling what we're feeling.
The police, because it was a prime minister investigation, and they knew that it will be very high profile, they investigated everybody. I mean, hundreds of people. Some of the witnesses were interrogated twice, 3 times, 4 times. You have a rare opportunity to see the most powerful people in Israel in interrogation rooms, dealing with questions that were never been asked. What did you give? What did you get? How many times you met him? And you see people in the most tense part of their life.
This is Miriam Adelson right here. She's saying we always pay when we go out with them. Why do you always pay? Ask them. All of Bibi's friends are rich. So that's the essence of your friendship? Money? What can I say? If this comes out, I'm dead. Yeah, that's Miriam Adelson. Miriam Adelson donated $100 million to the Trump campaign in this election. She is one of the most powerful Jewish political donors in the world. But there's more. They also have Sheldon Adelson's deposition, and Miriam and Sheldon give their frank opinions of Bibi's wife, Sarah, who we will talk about later. I'll narrate a little when they speak in Hebrew.
Listen, I think the country of Israel would be better off if she didn't put her nose into his politics. And she she's very unforgiving.
But I think that you're...
But I gotta tell you,
Okay.
I gotta be as honest with you as I can. I don't think I'll continue a friendship.
She's talking about how Sarah showed her a necklace that was really expensive that someone had bought for her. She was implying that she'd be really happy if Miriam bought her one too. She said she couldn't. She has a casino license. She can't do that. Doesn't look good. She's describing the type of political blackmail that the Netanyahus apparently, allegedly, take part in. You know, tit for tat. Quid pro quo. Little favor for favors, right? I just need another Tiffany & Co. necklace. I mean, what could go wrong, right? But before we get ahead of ourselves here, let's rewind a little bit. Let's rewind to sort of the beginning of this story. Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, was born in 1949 to secular Jewish parents, meaning non-religious. And that will become pretty important in just a moment. He is the longest serving prime minister in Israel's history, having served for a total of 17 years so far. That is 1996 to 99, again from 2009 to 2021, and then after a quick break, he was elected again in 2022. That last gap from 2021 to 2022 will become very important because that is where everything changed dramatically. But to understand that shift, you have to understand how much the power went to his head during his incredibly long time atop Israeli politics from 2009 to 2021. That is 12 consecutive years. That was throughout basically all of Obama's 2 terms and through Trump's first term. 18-year-olds serving in the IDF today have basically never known Israel without Bibi. And during that 12-year period, Bibi and his wife Sarah, who will become quite important in this story, became more and more corrupted by power, wealth, and influence. I'll let a short clip from the documentary explain a little better.
Netanyahu, over the years, had many corruption cases. In 1997, he was investigated for appointing the Attorney General in some corrupt deal. Later, he was interrogated for getting gifts. Also, one case that starts from investigative report that I made, it's about the submarines deal that Israel has with Germany, but he was never prosecuted. When you do something wrong and you get away with it, once and twice and 3 times and 10 times and 20 times, you're beginning to think that you are immune, that nothing will touch you. So it wasn't long before Netanyahu was into trouble again.
So the initial investigations opened in 2016. But throughout those years prior, when he was the prime minister for so long, Netanyahu not only got away with a number of alleged corrupt acts, but he also formed many very powerful and lucrative friendships. Many of the wealthiest people in the world are Jewish, and many of them have interests in Israel. Benjamin and Sarah Netanyahu seemed to learn that they could live that glamorous lifestyle by receiving gifts from their billionaire friends. And Sarah Netanyahu is apparently quite involved in all the crimes and controversy in a fundamental way. I'm going to turn it back over to the documentary to fill you in.
First of all, Mrs. Sarah Netanyahu is very important as a decision maker in everything that goes around Mr. Netanyahu.
So this is Miriam Fetz, former campaign manager, publicity manager, saying how Sarah intervenes in both political and media matters. She deals with hiring in the office.
Benjamin Netanyahu is extremely skillful and knowledgeable and smart, but can we trust you? So that's Sarah's responsibility. So once he thinks that someone has the right skills, still Sarah needs to give her approval that we, the Netanyahu family, can trust this guy or this lady.
She gets to decide who will be the advisors, she gets to decide the schedule, she gets to decide policy. She's very, very important. They are almost like a couple that runs the country.
Now she's saying, I represent Israel all over the world. My husband and I walk along rows of soldiers. I meet with world leaders and their wives. I bring a whole lot of respect to our country. And it's not publicized. And our country is missing out on it. She just seems like a really wonderful lady. And if you noticed, I was reading very exaggerated because she is talking intense. Like all the interview footage of her is intense. And it turns out that there's a reason why it's so intense. And I'll just, again, let the documentary describe why.
It's been proved in court that Sarah Netanyahu abused workers, treated them in the most humiliating way possible.
התחלתי בתור מאבטח של הילדים של ביבי, יאיר ואבנר, וגם של שרה נתניהו, אשת ראש הממשלה.
So this is their bodyguard, describing how he's in charge of the household.
ברגע שהם היו נוסעים לחו"ל,
And he's talking about how whenever they'd return from the White House, it was really hard because Sarah Netanyahu wanted to be treated just as nice as Melania, and all the same stops pulled out as for the American president and first lady. Needless to say, Israel does not exactly have the same, checkbook. But he says they know how to steal things that they want to have. The state wasn't willing to pay, so invoices had to be falsified. She did whatever she wanted, and her budget was always approved. She drinks a lot, and I figured out that's why her behavior was sometimes friendly, sometimes angry. She'd shout, and then she would be kind. That's the cycle, again and again. He knows that she drinks. He knows everything. When Sarah got in the car, after the drivers loaded her trunk with boxes of champagne, Sarah would take a glass of champagne. As I take a glass of coffee to go, she takes a glass of champagne. And it turns out that she takes a lot of glasses of champagne, it sounds like. And it turns out that her favorite champagne is pretty expensive. And they've racked up quite the bill that's not a bill because it was being provided by all of their rich friends over and over and over as some sort of gift or favor. And notice how the housekeeper, he said that Bibi knows everything. He has a very sharp mind, apparently, but not so sharp when it comes to remembering all the gifts that him and his wife received over the years. So anyways, in 2016, Israeli investigators opened up this investigation into the Netanyahus and their wealthy friends. And in America, unfortunately, this sounds kind of toothless. We've seen our politicians investigated occasionally, but never in recent memory has a president or high-ranking official faced any real justice or accountability for corruption, let alone the borderline treason that we've seen over the years. But Israel, to their credit, actually has a legit history of putting their politicians in prison when they were found guilty in a court of law. In the past 20 years, they have imprisoned a minister of finance, a president, and a prime minister for crimes like corruption, bribery, lying under oath, and rape. They've imprisoned more than that, but these are just the three biggest names. Every government struggles with corruption, and Israel is certainly no exception to that rule. Avraham Horshin, the minister of finance from 2006 to 2007, was convicted in 2009 of embezzling millions of shekels and other financial corruption. He was sentenced to 5 years and 5 months, plus a small fine. In 2010, Moshe Katsav, the 8th president of Israel, was convicted of rape, sexual harassment, committing an indecent act while using force, harassing a witness, and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 7 years and wound up serving about 5. In 2014, former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was sentenced to 6 years in prison. After appeals and continued trials, he wound up with a sentence for 27 months in prison, of which he wound up serving about 16, plus paying a small fine for corruption, much like what Netanyahu is accused of. So yeah, they still mostly got off easier, but they didn't get off clean. There is plenty of precedent for Netanyahu and his wife Sarah going to prison if he is convicted for the crimes he is accused of. And the evidence shown in the Bibi Files documentary alone is quite compelling. Hence why it is not available to stream on any mainstream platforms right now. Netanyahu stands accused of 3 separate but related offenses, titled Case 1000, 2000, and 4000. And I don't know who the hell comes up with these names. I don't write the rules. I just work here. They have dumb names. But Case 1000 revolves around Benjamin Netanyahu receiving a 20-year supply of gifts from ex-Israeli spy turned Hollywood tycoon Arnon Milchan, in exchange for illicit government favors like extending a tax loophole that would have saved him millions of dollars, pressuring John Kerry for help with Milchan's visas, and interceding on behalf of Milchan's investments using Netanyahu's government authority. All the types of things that Israel has jailed officials for in the past. And by the way, Arnon Milchan openly bragged about his time as an Israeli spy when he helped Israel steal nuclear technology from the US for their secret nuclear program that they aren't supposed to have and still officially do not. That's actually tied into why Bibi had to help him deal with the visa issues, but that's a different rabbit hole. Case 2000 involves Netanyahu's relationship with the publisher and controlling owner of one of the most popular Israeli newspaper publications, Yedioth Aharonoth. His name is Arnon Moses. The allegation is that Netanyahu was trading political favors for positive media coverage of him and his wife. This is especially concerning because the relationship came into focus surrounding the 2016 election, where the two allegedly collaborated to weaken Netanyahu's opponent and presumably win him the election. Who knows if he would have won without this corrupted media slant in his direction, but that's concerning. Case 4000 is pretty similar to Case 2000. It involves Netanyahu forming a similar relationship with the owner of one of Israel's top online news platforms named Walla. He used it to run positive coverage of him and his wife, as well as negative coverage of his opponents. Basically, Netanyahu has allegedly fashioned himself more and more over the years as the supreme ruler of Israel, and he has wielded his power to corrupt the media, exchange favors, and enrich his family through his position of power. Even Bibi's son, Yair, got in on dictating content to Walla, that news site, and let's just say that Yair has some extreme views. I'm going to show a clip from the documentary for this.
Yair,
He's ultra right-wing. I don't think even his father is as right-leaning. But Yair, he's like a dictatorial right, is what she's saying.
The common theme between the left in Israel, America, and Europe is pushing forward illegal immigration and illegal immigrants because they want to change the identity of the country and make national identity obsolete.
He says from the moment he wakes up and all night long, the guy's on the internet. He's a news junkie, 24/7. He doesn't work. He believes that his father is too weak. Doesn't perform under pressure. Isn't aggressive enough. Even says that he's dedicating the next few years, Yair is, to making sure my father doesn't mess up.
Bibi told me one day, I remember, that Yair can replace him. I did this with my eyes. Okay, I didn't say a word. My eyebrows went up.
That's Bibi's
Yair
best
can
friend.
replace you. First of all, you can't appoint your son. Why can he be considered? He said, well, he has the capability. He really thinks that it's like the kingdom.
And I just want to point out that in this clip, the one thing you saw Yair say was about illegal immigration, and it didn't actually sound that far right. In context of right now in America, it actually sounded pretty reasonable. But just trust me, watch the whole documentary and the other things that he says, the way he acts on camera, and it's quite the picture. Especially when you consider that Bibi, the elected prime minister of Israel, was floating the idea of his son replacing him, like it's a monarchy or something. So the whole thing kind of gets pretty dictatorial pretty fast. And it's probably best if we don't reflect the story back on the United States too much, because it gets pretty depressing when you do. These are criminal acts, and anyone that commits them in a democratic society should go to prison. Regardless of the society, they should go to prison. So, in November 2019, after the investigation had been going for a while, Netanyahu was officially charged with all of these cases. And then, the world broke out into a global pandemic, which was, let's just say, very convenient for Benjamin. But as the world came out of the pandemic, he was beaten in the 2021 election, and suddenly, he became very vulnerable. He was facing multiple serious charges, and his seat of power from which he had allegedly been ministering favors to his rich friends was gone. Netanyahu's only choice, his only path forward, was to get back into office as quickly as possible and to do something to bury these charges forever. And this is where everything gets really dark. But before we go into this next phase of the story, I want to take a break and tell you about one of our sponsors. I want to tell you about American Financing. Is now a good time to buy a home? The answer is absolutely yes. We are in a buyer's market, and if you've been sitting on the sidelines, you need to call American Financing today. The first step to getting a home is getting the right loan, and they can pre-approve you in 24 hours or less. There are more houses on the market today than there have been in the last 5 years. Interest rates are competitive, and home prices have been stable. That means you can find a great deal while locking in a monthly payment that fits your budget. Plus, with home equity building over time, your investment grows, making home ownership a smart long-term financial decision. If you continue to pay rent, you're just paying your landlord's mortgage, and you don't need 20% down. You could be in your new home with as little as 3% down. Plus, there are down payment assistance programs to make home ownership even easier. Don't wait any longer. Call American Financing today. 800-795-1210. That's 800-795-1210. Or visit americanfinancing.net/Owens.
All right. I also want to throw it to my sponsors of today's episode, Goldco, because you may have heard that Ron DeSantis signed a bill that would recognize gold and silver as legal tender in the state of Florida, exempting them from sales tax. Yeah, that law is set to take effect on July 1st, 2026, pending ratification by the state legislature. Now, why did he do this? Well, Governor DeSantis explained it by saying, quote, "This is our ability to give you the financial freedom to be able to protect yourself against the declining value of the dollar." And I guess all that inflation and skyrocketing national debt, not to mention the recent credit downgrade for the United States, may have opened his eyes, because this is exactly the reason that I partnered with a precious metals company. The writing has been on the wall for a long time now, so if you want to learn more about how gold and silver can help you protect your money, reach out to my partners over at Goldco. They're a great company. I trust them. They've helped me out tremendously. Just visit CandaceLikesGold.com to get a free 2025 gold and silver kit. And you'll also learn about their unlimited bonus silver offer. So go to CandaceLikesGold.com. Again, that is CandaceLikesGold.com.
So anyways, Netanyahu had been aligning more and more with right-wing factions in Israel for some time, and he had become more and more corrupt. Many Israelis point to the 2015 elections, which he won with the alleged support of his corrupt media moguls involved in his criminal charges. But he was okay because he was in power and he was able to leverage that power to protect himself and his friends. But now, in 2021, he was out with mainstream Israeli politics. He had become a pariah and lost his support as a central figure in Israeli politics. And so he looked around for allies. And he found them in the furthest extreme Israeli right wing, where Jewish supremacists, settler colonialists, genocidal terrorists had all been waiting for their day in power. And Bibi decided that given the choice between facing his charges and probably going to prison, or taking Israel down a genocidal, racist, and supremacist path, he chose the latter. He chose to go to any length to retake power and escape prison. Now meet Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, two of the most prominent and clear examples of the path that Netanyahu has taken his country down. Both live in illegal Israeli settlements on stolen land in the West Bank. Both have participated in and support Jewish terrorism in the past. They represent the most fervent, fascist, religious extremism of the Israeli right wing. They represent the beliefs of many Jewish supremacists in Israel that the Palestinian people should be eliminated and ethnically cleansed at any cost, that they are goyim and not deserving of the same rights as Jews. And now they have a stranglehold over Benjamin Netanyahu, even if he wanted out of the toxic relationship, which there's not necessarily indication that he does. But because they represent the right-wing coalition that elected him, if Netanyahu doesn't appease them, he will almost surely lose his position and maybe be locked up. Smotrich not only lives in an illegal Israeli settlement in the West Bank, but he actually lives outside of its borders as an active expansion of that settlement, which is a great metaphor for his political and religious perspective. He was literally arrested in 2005 for being a Jewish terrorist, though the investigation never pursued charges. The Jerusalem Post reports that as finance minister, he is working to cut off the Palestinian Authority from Israel's financial system. He is using his authority to stop transferring tax payments that belong to the Palestinian Authority and continues to prevent the return of Palestinian workers to Israel, together with his partners in the government and against recommendations of all security officials. As a result of these actions, the security forces are now alerting about the collapse of the Palestinian Authority and the dire consequences for Israel's security if such a scenario takes place. The economic strangulation of the Palestinian Authority carried out by the Israeli government occurs while money from Iran continues to flow to the West Bank with the aim of promoting terrorist attacks. Smotrich is not stupid, the Jerusalem Post reports. He understands the security dangers in the collapse of the Palestinian Authority's economy, but this is exactly his goal. His ideological partner, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, also supports the vision of chaos driven by Iran and the efforts to weaken the Palestinian Authority. During Jerusalem Day celebrations, Ben-Gvir stated that his policy is that Jews would be allowed to carry out religious rituals on the Holy Temple Mount. This is the faction that dreams of the day when they can destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild the Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, which is the symbolic center of the global religious conflict between Judaism and Islam. That course of action would almost certainly spell global war, quite likely nuclear in nature, and both of these men are intentionally stoking dissent, stoking division, and stoking chaos in the West Bank because they know that more terrorism, more chaos, more destabilization, though it leads to more violence, it also leads to opportunity. Itamar Ben-Gvir spoke openly in support of the assassination of the Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, who signed the Oslo Accord peace treaties with the Palestinians. Here's a clip from the documentary to fill it in.
When it comes to Ben-Gvir, he supported the assassination of Prime Minister Rabin when he was a youngster.
He was once filmed holding a hood emblem he claimed was from the car of former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, an architect of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process.
Saying you managed to snatch the emblem from Rabin's car? The emblem is a symbol, and it symbolizes that just like we got to the emblem, we can get to Rabin as well. I think one is justified in committing horrible acts against him.
A Jewish extremist assassinated Rabin 3 weeks later.
Ben-Gvir, he was not recruited to military service because he was condemned in court as one who supported Jewish terror.
He's the follower of a racist movement and wants to expel what he calls disloyal Arabs.
I love Israel and I not against all the Arabs. Just the jihad.
Why do you want to
expel Palestinians? They won't kill me and kill you, the jihadists.
In occupied East Jerusalem, he pulled out his gun, calling for Palestinians who throw stones to be shot.
He sees violence as a legitimate action.
These are people that Netanyahu would not agree to take picture with just 2-3 years ago. But now Smotrich is the Minister of Finance and Ben-Gvir is the Minister of National Security.
Yeah. If you don't know about the time when Jewish extremists killed their own prime minister for daring to take action towards peace, oh boy, is that a rabbit hole. And it's a rabbit hole that led directly to Netanyahu's first election as prime minister, then Jeffrey Epstein's buddy Ehud Barak through 2001, and anyways, I'm getting distracted. That's a different episode. Ben-Gvir was also a member of the Koch Party, based on Kahanism, and the Koch Party was actually outlawed in Israel, and the U.S. State Department designated it a foreign terrorist organization. It's based on the theology of Meir Kahane, who founded the Jewish Defense League, which was a Jewish terrorist organization operating in the U.S. and Canada to, quote, protect Jews from anti-Semitism by whatever means necessary. Those means included bombing Arab and Soviet properties in the United States and assassinating a number of people they deemed to be enemies of the Jewish people. For anyone curious, there's a whole rabbit hole of how the JDL was involved in the murder of Tupac and extortion of several rap artists, including Tupac and Eazy-E. There was an FBI investigation that fell flat and a whole bunch of Jewish mobster stuff tied in. That is a wild story to dig into. But anyways, Netanyahu allies with Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, wins the election in December of 2022, and then in the first week, they begin to undermine the power of the Supreme Court in Israel. I'm going to take it back to a clip to explain this a little better.
This man is now the minister that is controlling the police. And he is bringing his racist, violent ideology in all the policing system inside Israel.
Smotrich would do ethnic cleansing based on his published plan. That's Bibi's governing coalition.
For them, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, they have a zero interest in the corruption cases because Netanyahu is the Messiah's donkey. He can bring us all our fantasies, all our dreams, our vision to annex Judea and Samaria, to kill one time and for all the idea of Palestinian state.
So what happened in 2023? What was the difference between 2023 and the 20 years that came before? Only one thing: the Supreme Court.
And real quick, before we get too far into this, I just want to make clear what they just said. These guys, the right-wing factions they represent, they were not considered political contenders. They were not considered part of the political norm. They were the fringe until Bibi brought them in. And the moment they get in, this is what they do in order to codify that win, in order to start to change the nature of democracy in Israel.
The Supreme Court was perceived by his partners, the Ben-Gvirs, the Smotriches, as the rival of what they want to achieve.
Because if you are an annexationist, the Supreme Court might stop you. So you need to castrate the Supreme Court from being able to stop you. At the same time, Netanyahu realized judicial reform could be a way to legislate his way out of his legal predicament.
Just out of the little legal predicament. And so, 1 week after Netanyahu returns to power with the help of the supremacist far right, they take active steps to undermine Israel's democracy. Protests break out in the streets again with renewed vigor. Violence escalates, spurred on by Ben-Gvir's insane zealotry in command of the police force, and the situation quickly grows to a fever pitch throughout 2023. And then that's when, tragically, but conveniently for Bibi, Hamas attacks on October 7th. The documentary does a great job of showing the actual footage of the attacks to remind us all how brutal it was. They don't embellish it with any kind of questionable stories like hundreds of beheaded babies or babies found in ovens or all kinds of crazy mass rapes. They just show the footage, which is horrific enough without propaganda or lies embellishing the facts. And as soon as Israel is under threat, the entire country comes together and shifts dramatically towards the right wing. Suddenly, the focus is no longer on Netanyahu, no longer on his assault on Israeli democracy. Now the existential threat is Hamas. Despite the fact that Netanyahu propped up and facilitated millions of dollars of funding for Hamas for years, specifically to keep the Gaza Strip destabilized. His own IDF ordered their helicopters to fire indiscriminately on vehicles returning to the Gaza Strip, likely killing dozens or even hundreds of Israeli civilians and potential hostages that were in and around those cars. It came out later that Netanyahu's intelligence services had known of the attack in advance, too, and they had not acted on that intelligence. In fact, they had coincidentally moved 2 full companies of IDF commandos away from the Gaza border just 2 days before the attacks, which I'm sure was just a coincidence and had nothing to do with their extremely advanced intelligence services knowing about the attacks in advance. And then, When the investigation into what really happened on October 7th got too hot, the court that Bibi was in the process of strangling ordered a suspension of the investigation. Nothing to see here. Are you getting the picture yet? Because if you're not, the documentary makes a point of showing in graphic detail the destruction that was subsequently reaped upon the Palestinians. By the end of the sequence, you can't help but feel the plight of both peoples and rage for the corruption and immorality that led to this whole situation. And that is why this documentary is so important, because it makes it plain for everyone to see that this is a more complex issue than just the Jews versus the Palestinians. It's more complex than just Israel is evil, more complex than blaming an entire group of people for the world's problems. Israel is being preyed upon by a parasite. It is infected by the fringe extremist ideology of Jewish supremacy that has been a significant but not always controlling mindset in Israeli politics until recently. And now, that mindset, that disease, is walking the whole world past one after the next point of no return. This war has claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians at the hands of a US-backed and armed military, which is led by Jewish terrorists that openly state their intentions to ethnically cleanse Gaza and all of Palestine. Netanyahu is so corrupted and absorbed by his own self-preservation that he will go along with just about anything that ensures he holds on to power. Protests have resumed in the streets over his handling of the war and his apparent indifference to the lives of the hostages still held by Hamas more than a year and a half later. The head of the Shin Bet, similar to Israel's FBI, resigned a few months ago, stating that he believed Netanyahu was dictatorial and power-crazed. He claimed that it was clear that if there were to be a constitutional crisis, Netanyahu would expect him to obey the prime minister and not the courts, and that Netanyahu had asked him to use the Shin Bet to spy on Israeli citizens that participated in and supported the protests. Netanyahu denied the allegations exactly as he has with every other allegation, because if there is one thing that Netanyahu is good at, it is acting. He's good at acting however he needs to act in order to escape justice for one more day, to hold on to power for one more day, to delay the inevitable one more day. But the inevitable is coming. This documentary is spreading the truth all throughout Israel and all around the world. And so now I'm going to tell you where to find it so you can watch it too. But first, I want to take a quick break to tell you about the Wellness Company. Ever wonder why your brain feels foggy, even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout. It could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan McDonald revealed a direct link between chronic parasitic infections and neurological diseases like multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reasons to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The Wellness Company has a solution for you. Ivermectin plus mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution, now combined in one clean combo, designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmicks. Fill out a quick intake form and get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. Maha is officially here, and the Wellness Company is making hard-to-get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Cleanse your body today. Head to twc.health/Candace and use code Candace to save $90 off plus free shipping. That's twc.health/Candace with promo code Candace. All right, so about where to watch this documentary. Unfortunately, Bibi got his way and had it taken down off all major streaming platforms. But I found it still available from the producers on their website. And you should support the producers by going to their website. It's linked in the description below. You can use this URL. There, you can click on Stream Now, which was in the bottom left there, and it'll take you to the film that is streamed through Jolt. You can pay for a ticket and support the brave men and women that made this film. They made it at great personal expense and risk, and they have done an immeasurable service to the world. And for the price of about a Big Mac meal, you can vote your support for them. This is obviously not a paid promotion that I'm doing. I have no affiliation with this film. This is just the truth, and it matters. It matters to everyone all around the world because whether we like it or not, Israel is pulling the entire globe into this conflict. Our own politicians are pulling us into this conflict by funding it, endorsing it, and passing speech laws in America if you question it. And the ultimate tragedy of this genocide is that in many ways, it's only possible because this one cowardly, evil man would rather watch the whole world burn than face the consequences of his corruption. He would rather tear down Israel's democratic system, the only democracy in the Middle East. He would rather let his own people remain in Hamas captivity, rather let his own people continue to die in war, his own economy crumble, his own nation and people's goodwill evaporate all around the world, than face justice. Benjamin Netanyahu has opened the gates to the most vile, supremacist, fascist wing of Judaism to take power in Israel and to slaughter Palestinian men, women, and children. He has opened Pandora's box and crossed a line we will never return from. And he's doing it all just to save his own pathetic skin. But his cowardice is being used by extremists in Israel to achieve their own messianic goals. It's being used by deep staters around the world to profit off another forever war. It's being used by the surveillance state to test their dystopian technologies. And it's being used by the ruling class to further divide the people. Ultimately, I hope that we can move this conversation to a mature enough place where Jewish people around the world can have a bit of a reckoning with the reality of their national project, the reality of how their own religion can harbor extremist views, just like the Arabs that they are so quick to point the finger at. No group of people is beyond criticism. No group is exempt from the wickedness of humanity's darkest tendencies, and Jewish people face a unique and difficult reckoning. If Jewish people want to maintain a strong sense of national identity and unity, what happens when members of your tribe commit atrocities for corrupt reasons and then turn the world against you? When Jewish people group up around that identity, what happens when people notice and say Jewish people are conspiring against the rest of the world? How do you reconcile these things? If Jewish people are going to maintain such a strong global identity, to me, it seems that the burden falls to them to a certain degree to hold all other Jews to the highest moral standard. Or else, how can you blame people for collectively blaming Jews when it is Jews who group up collectively and defend the actions of a man like Netanyahu at any cost? And I know a lot of Jews don't do that. A lot of Jews think critically and are outspoken about the corruption in Israel and the insanity of its current course of action. The way that I see it, just me, all Jews are individuals, and they should be treated as such. I would encourage Jews not to treat Israel as an infallible project. Israel has committed many atrocities and has much to answer for. Tying your identity to a corrupt government is a horrible idea. As an American, my job is to loudly criticize my government for its crimes, and I call for it to do better. I would invite Jewish people to do the same for theirs. Because with every dead Palestinian child, the world turns more and more against Israel and those who stand with her. Violence and hate only begets more violence and hate. It was that cycle of violence that got us into this mess. And the only way out of it is with Bibi behind bars. Anyways, that's all for today. Tomorrow, we'll wrap up my time here on Candace with you guys by weaving together all of the biggest conspiracy theories of our day for the ultimate tinfoil episode. Thanks for tuning in, for hitting like, leaving comments, and subscribing to Candace. I also really appreciate it if you all go and click the link in the description to go to my channel, Ian Carroll Show, and subscribe there too. I'll be back on there continuing all this content and more soon. Now, be sure to drink your water, do something nice for someone, and tell your family you love them, and we'll see you tomorrow.